Hi, I'm Linda Kohanov, author of 5 books on the healing and transformational power of the human-animal bond, including The Tao of Equus, Riding Between the Worlds, and Way of the Horse, Equine Archetypes for Self-Discovery. And I'm very excited about a new book by my good friend and colleague, Sarah Barnes. It's called She Who Rides Horses, A Saga of the Ancient Steppe. And this is just book 1, by the way, and it's brand new. It just came out. And anybody who is a fan of horses, whether you're a rider or someone who works in the field of equine facilitated learning or equine facilitated therapy, or just somebody who loves horses and loves stories about horses, or just always wanted to have a horse, this book is for you. It's a fictional tale, but Sarah is a historian. You have a PhD.
I have a PhD in history from Northwestern, and I am a retired historian. I discovered I wasn't really telling stories the way I had when I was growing up, and it was the stories that drew me to history. And by the time I became a professional historian, the stories had somehow sort of slipped away. So now I get to be in that gap between what the evidence says and what really happened, and we'll never actually know what really happened, but the gap is where the imagination is. So it's much more fun being a storyteller than just an historian.
Yes, and the key thing for me is that you are a historian, but you have magnificent writing ability and also an incredible imagination.
Well,
And this is really the story of the first person who rides horses. And so I love the fact that it's based on a lot of the newest research about the domestication of the horse. And there are some surprising aspects of this that are coming forward. Would you like to tell us a few facts that you added to this book that you based your story on?
Well, in doing the research after the idea for the story itself came to me, the primary thing that I discovered about domestication was that it was a mutual endeavor. It wasn't just that ancient humans decided, oh, it would be helpful to be able to ride horses rather than just hunt them. Even with cattle, sheep, and goats who were domesticated even before horses, and dogs even prior to that, there was a mutual connection, and the same was definitely true with horses. And so that bond had to be there, that relationship had to be there before the sort of functional, useful aspects of domestication could really emerge. And it was that relationship that I was really interested in. But there's not a whole lot known about how that process took place. And the most interesting new avenue of information is DNA research, which is really helping us to understand where the first horses were domesticated and how they were incorporated into the community of the ancient humans that created those initial relationships.
I'm thinking also of a book that was very influential for me, and I've recommended that people read this book, is Made for Each Other by Meg Daly Olmert, which the subtitle is The Biology of the Human-Animal Bond. Yeah. And what she really brings up in a lot of the biochemical research now is showing is that humans were transformed by their interactions with other animals and also vice versa. It was a mutual transformation process. So we were as affected by the animals we formed partnerships with as they were affected by us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We changed each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And Meg Olmert talks a lot about the chemical aspects, the hormonal aspects, and behind how that bonding occurs. There's other research that talks about, from a neurological standpoint, how humans' sense of time and space changed and processing abilities.
Wow.
So that by being able to travel at the speed of a galloping horse rather than just on our own 2 feet, our brains actually changed in terms of speed of processing information.
Wow. I hadn't heard that part
Yeah,
before.
yeah. So yeah, but to your point that it was a transformative experience for both parties.
And it is significant too because some of the studies that have been done show that the animals themselves, there were individuals among the animals that were more ambassador-like, so that there would be certain humans who would be more interested in forming a partnership with a horse than eating the horse. And so that attitude would be, and everything about that person's body language and how they, interacted with the animals, even just watching them from a distance, would have set them apart from other humans at that time. And the idea is that there are also certain individual animals among the original wild animals that were more gregarious, that were more courageous, that were more interested in other species. And that is so very well represented in this book, She Who Rides Horses. Can you tell us a little more about the plot and how that comes out?
Well, the book started actually at a workshop that I attended here called Writing Between the Worlds.
And that's Writing Between the Worlds.
Yep. And the story just came to me of a girl and a horse being drawn to one another. And the girl being a little bit different from her peers in terms of her interest in the horses and the wild animals. And then a horse who was a little bit more curious, a little bit more interested in exploring an interspecies connection. So the story presented itself, and then I went out and did the research. And one of the current authors that talks about that curiosity and bravery and willingness to interact is Joe Hutto's book, I think it's Touching the Wild. And
Yes.
he talks about befriending a herd of deer, but it took one individual deer who was willing to make that interspecies connection. And I think that was probably in the back of my mind in terms of thinking about this young red filly who is willing to try connecting with this young red-headed girl.
And there really is a lot of evidence that this was, in some sense, what we might call a shamanic act. So that shamans, the word shaman actually comes from that general region where horses were first domesticated, in the steppes of Central Asia. And shamans are considered people who go easily back and forth between the world of consensual, concrete reality and all of these other worlds of insight. But also, shamans were often thought of as moving back and forth between the human and animal realms. And many of the tribes that still move with large herd animals, like horses, cattle, goats, they will often consider themselves to be half human, half animal. And all of their mythology is based on that idea. So many people consider, like the tribes that move with the deer, consider themselves to be half human, half deer. And other horse tribes consider themselves to be half human, half horse.
And how many of us that love horses ran around as little girls pretending we were horses?
I certainly did.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. A lot of times we would take my friend's horses, my friend had horses, we would take them out of the barn and then we would get in the barn stalls ourselves and act like horses as often as we were riding. So I definitely know how that feels.
And I think anytime that we can imagine ourselves not only as another person, which is often what literature does, reading does, right? It takes us into somebody else's world. If we're able to do that, not just with other people, but with animals, that gives us a sense of our true connectedness to the world around us, and being able to exercise that element of imagination.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we do in the Writing Between the Worlds workshop is we do engage this other form of consciousness that we might call a shamanic form of consciousness. The horses really want us to engage in embodied spirituality so that we are at times fully present in this world. We're not trying to deny this world, but also be able to recognize that your psyche can explore other worlds and go back in time and move through time and space and change form. And so we have exercises during the Writing Between the Worlds workshop where people exercise that additional ability as we also work in the here and now with the real live horses. And you had really quite an amazing symbol come through to start with. And I just love this symbol. In fact, you're actually wearing a necklace.
I am. I don't know if you
symbol.
can see it on the camera, but yeah, it's a moon and a sun conjoined. And the symbol came to me first, actually, the very first workshop that I did here, which was not the writing workshop, but was one called Black Horse Wisdom. And we were doing a guided journey with your husband Steve's music. And this image came to me, and I noted it in my journal, and didn't think a whole lot of it other than it had been a very powerful image, and something to kind of explore and try to figure out, because it seems sort of impossible how you can have the sun and the moon together. But that's the amazing thing about that imaginal realm, is all sorts of things that seem impossible, in fact, are possible. And then when I came back 6-9 months later for the next workshop, that image came up again, and I've continued to work with it in the book. And there are some journey sequences where that image comes up. And for me, it has a lot to do about the joining of opposites, and working with duality and finding the union in duality. So whether that's masculine, feminine, human, animal, but that finding that balance, and what happens when things get out of balance. And so some of those themes are introduced in the first book, and then they'll be explored even further as we go along. But the inspiration definitely comes in those passages which are fostered here so readily, where you can suspend the everyday and really dive into that imaginal realm.
And that's what I really love about this book, and what you're able to do is that you really are bringing the sun and the moon together, even in terms of the states of consciousness that you had to engage to pull this off, so that you are very much in the logical historian research realm. Mm-hmm. And we would, symbolically think of that as sun consciousness, mm-hmm. what we're really conscious of, logic, this world, but also bringing in the moon consciousness, the whimsical side, the intuitive side. And throughout this book, you really are joining those two forms of consciousness with almost every word you write.
Well, thank you for appreciating that, because that's very much the way the process has felt as well, and being able to braid those two together. I do sort of feel like the story is being channeled through me, and because I can bring those sort of, as you say, sun energy or left brain linear sequential abilities in, as I said earlier, I think the imaginative part was what I felt was missing from my career as a professional historian. So this is such a gift to feel like I can braid those two together.
Yes, and this is a really important book, She Who Rides Horses. And do you want to just give us a quick overview of the plot? Just, I guess you don't want to give everything away.
No spoilers. But,
right, no spoilers.
But the main character is a young woman, really. She's just on the cusp of adulthood, and lives with her clan in the steppes of Eurasia, actually what is now southern Russia. And she's a little bit of an outsider. She's a little bit different from her peers, and she develops this fascination with horses, and makes this connection with a particular chestnut filly who is also unusual. Horses at that time would have been mostly sort of Dunn's buckskin so that they would meld into the landscape. And with the help of her grandmother, she and the support of her grandfather as well, she comes up with this plan to try to tame not just the red filly, but her whole family, the small herd that she belongs to, because she really wants not just to touch this horse, but actually to ride the horse. And so then the story is of her adventures in fulfilling this quest that she has. And there's life-threatening danger. There is the arrival of a couple of strangers who both of them end up presenting love interests for characters in the story. And eventually she does get to ride. But then she has to go back to her family and her clan and figure out, and this is what happens in the second book, figure out how she's going to bring this relationship that she's been able to develop, not just with the filly, but with the filly's whole herd, how she can bring that back to civilization, so to speak. So it's a little bit the reverse of the hero's journey. You can think of it as the heroine's journey, where the true struggle takes place not away from her people, but actually when she comes back.
Because they're opportunistic men in her clan that are going to try to do what all opportunists do, which is capitalize on what a creative visionary discovers and works hard to come up with. And now they're going to, they see all kinds of good, useful purposes for having these horses. And so it seems to me like she's about to get roped in and is going to have to reclaim her freedom as well. And
that's the essence of the story is, and it comes up in the first sort of shamanic experience that she has with this horse, is how to create ties without the use of a rope. And that's really what the essence of the quest that she's on is how does she develop relationship with this horse.
Yeah, it's very well done. It's really fun to read. It's exciting too, and there are moments where you really feel like you're getting an actual sensory experience as you're reading of what it's like to smell the air, to be with the horse, to feel the horse's coat, to feel the excitement of riding for the first time, and all of the things that happen that become challenges. You know, when you have a vision to do something new, there's just all kinds of things that seem to get in the way.
Yep.
And for her to be able to continue to follow her vision, which is a shamanic vision that keeps calling her forward, along with this filly, and then to be able to really manifest it in this world and really make it happen, is very well done in this book. And again, this is just book one
just
of
book
three.
One of three.
Of three. And I did write the afterword and really had a lot of fun talking in the afterword about how some of the research, how some of the plot lines are figuring into the research. And you also wrote an author's note too, where you talked about some of the research. And so I feel like
I
it's
put
really
on my
important.
historian hat and my historian voice, and yeah, I couldn't quite leave that out entirely, but
Yeah, well, I think most of us who love horses want the facts too. I love a beautiful story, but I also really enjoy the fact that it has a real historical basis.
yeah, I tried to make it as absolutely as accurate as possible. There is a anthropologist who has written a book called The Horse, the Wheel, and Language, David Anthony, whose work I drew on quite a bit. And I actually developed a correspondence with him and double checked some things, and just to make sure that as all good, really good historical fiction is, that it was as true to what we can know. But then, like I said, then there's that gap, and that's where the fun is.
It truly is. And it really is fun, and it's very moving too. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the book is She Who Rides Horses by Sarah V. Barnes, and it's available at Amazon.
Amazon, if you would like it to be available at your local independent bookstore and can get me connected, I would love to have it in independent bookstores, but yet it is available on Amazon. So.
And when do you think part 2 is going to come out?
Well, part 2 is written and in the process of being reworked, and so hopefully it won't take quite as long to come out as the first volume. So within the year, I think.
Okay, good, because I'm dying to know what happens next.
Well, I left everybody literally on the edge of a cliff, so.
Truly. Thank you so much, Sarah.
My
and I
pleasure.
look forward to book 2 and book 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.